right, let's get it. Let's get it. It's time for Big Broadcast, episode 42. Football talk with Unc. Round 10. We're going in. We're going to the end of the round. Boxing vibes.
All right.
Previewing. You know how that goes, man. We're gonna talk about week 13, and then we're gonna preview week 14 and get ready for this football. Amazing week of football, man. Unc, talk to me. How are you doing? You doing good, my man?
Doing all right, buddy. Doing all right.
I love it. We got to start off with the biggest news of the day, of the hour. Basically, what everybody's been talking about. Baker, the magic maker. What happened, man? What was that? Thursday
Well,
night, prime time, able to get the game-winning touchdown, 90 yards up the field. What was that? That was crazy, brother. Talk to me about it, man. How do you feel about that?
98 yards. just like
True.
ridiculous, right?
They started at the two. Yeah, they started at
I
the
don't
2-yard
know
line.
I don't know what to tell you about Baker Mayfield. If you look at his line, it's not that really great. It was like a 17-16 win type of thing. What can I tell you? Curtis Mayfield, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is an emotional man,
Yes.
and my guess is that he had he was just feeling in a way. And, here he is, first game with his first new team. So, yeah, he comes out just fantastic looking in the sense that he got the W. The guy was hitting Jefferson like he'd been playing with him for years. So it was pretty amazing. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure that that Mayfield is going to be, this will be notched up to just, a stupendous emotional first win with his first team, etc. I don't think you're going to see a lot more like that coming out of him.
I highly doubt it too, but it was amazing to watch, man. It's just cool to watch a guy
That's
who's
fun.
been going through so much BS, especially with Carolina, starting, sitting, injuries, all this, and then actually have a competent, pretty good coach in Sean McVay. And obviously, they were lucky enough to play the Las Vegas Raiders, who always find a way to choke, man. Tell me about that. If you're a Raider fan, how crazy would you be right now?
Well, I was actually looking at this when I was looking at the fantasy numbers.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy because you've got both Josh Jacobs as your number one running back basically in the league right now. Plus, you've also got Devontae Adams, which if you don't realize that Devontae Adams is having one of the 6 seasons for wide receivers. He's actually like, did you see that first catch he made?
Oh
in the
my
first
God, the
quarter
one hand that he did
with Jalen against
with Jalen on his
Ramsey.
back. I was like, what the hell was that? It was amazing.
Right. So you have to ask yourself, what the hell's going on that they're 5-8 when they have all those great players, right? So yeah, last night was another example of the Raiders basically giving you less than they could. So I'm pretty sure that also helped Baker Mayfield, right? But the Raiders basically put themselves out of any Super Bowl or playoff aspirations with that game. They're 5-8 now, and I just don't understand how it is that they don't put more wins on the board.
It's crazy because a lot of their games they've already won. Well, not already won, but they're leading, right?
Yeah.
Like even
like
that
last
game.
night.
Even that
Thursday
game, they
night.
were leading. I was like, whoa, okay. I'm like, I was about to turn the TV off because I'm like, it's over, But then
you're the
Baker.
You're the second person to tell me that. I had somebody else tell me that they went back just to check the the final score because they're in a pool or whatever, and they're like, well, what the hell did I just watch?
Yes, exactly. Because you're thinking, okay, this game is done. You're just supposed to close it out. But the Raiders have some Ravens in them, apparently, because as soon as they have a lead, they can easily lose it as much as they can gain it, man. And I just think it's cool to see Baker come in. And my thoughts is that, let him have his chance, his shot, just play some games. Matt Stafford is done for the season. The Rams are not going anywhere. They're not going to the playoffs. Let him have his fun. It's almost like a dress rehearsal for another team, or maybe he'll be the backup for the time being. But it's crazy to think how this man was a number 1 overall pick, man. How crazy is that? And this is his third team in 1 year.
Yeah. No, again, like I say, Mayfield is like he's an emotional man, and
Yeah,
he's done some things to himself, and then he's found himself in less than optimal situations and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I believe that Baker Mayfield is where he should be, and that is a backup player coming
yeah.
in to have a great game because it happens from time to time.
I agree. I agree. I was thinking about even watching the games last week, man. Just stuff off rip. By the way, people subscribe to the channel, man. Show us some love, show us some likes. I
Yeah.
appreciate the interaction. Y'all are coming in there, showing us love. Thank you. Last week's games, a lot of quarterbacks got injured, man. Jimmy G,
Hmm.
Lamar,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what's going on right now? And these injuries have playoff implications, man. I'm thinking
Hmm.
like Brock Purdy versus the
Anybody?
Bucks. Basically anybody is Brock Purdy the answer. Like what's going on? All these injuries happening at the end of the season. What do you think, Uncle? Let me know your thoughts on these weird injuries to playoff contenders, man. Oh,
Well, yeah, because I was looking for where Jimmy G actually got injured. I mean, I had to go
right.
back to the replays because it wasn't really dramatic. I think he
Oh,
just fell on his foot or something like that. I took a look at both injuries as vis-a-vis their impact on their team going forward, etc.
yeah.
They're actually really quite different. Garoppolo's out for the season, and
Yeah.
so you're stuck with Purdy for the rest of the year. And they also have uh, the 49ers have a more challenging schedule than do the Ravens. And
Yes.
the Ravens, for one, have a mini me with Huntley.
Yeah.
He plays almost exactly like Lamar Jackson does.
Yes.
In fact, you've got a fantasy analyst suggesting that you should pick him up, given all the buys that are on
Oh,
this week and whatnot. Even if you're just going to stream the guy,
okay.
because they expect him. They don't expect very much of a drop off in play and all that type of stuff as far as a couple of games go, and that is what we're looking at. They
Right.
what's the Harbaugh says, what is it? It could be days to weeks, plural,
Yeah.
for that
Well,
injury.
yeah.
I saw some analysts saying that injury maxes out at about 3 weeks. So Lamar Jackson will be back in time for the playoffs and in time to finish out the season.
Yes.
Because there's a big game against the Bengals on January
Yeah.
8th
That's
that
the
will
last game of the year.
probably, if the division hasn't been settled by then, it will be after that game.
Mm,
The Ravens are still in it. They're
yeah.
actually in first place this week. I thought that the Bengals would have moved into first, but apparently not. So I think that the injury for Lamar Jackson isn't going to be nearly as serious as the impact of Jimmy G getting injured in San Francisco. It's basically on San Francisco's defense, if it wasn't already so. It's going to
Yeah.
be on San Francisco's defense to hold that team together over the next 5 weeks. Because
Yes.
the Seahawks are only one game behind. And the 49ers, they need their defense to step in and really shut down games so that Brock Purdy can't lose them.
Man, I'm telling you right now, imagine being Brock Purdy, the very last pick in the draft.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Although now it's Mr. Irrelevant is now the starting quarterback of I'm gonna say as it is, it's a Super Bowl contending team. Like, what
Yes, they
is
are.
life right now? So
Yep.
yes, like you said, the Niners have a rougher chance because the Seahawks are coming. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
the Ravens schedule is not that bad because we play Cleveland, I think, twice, and
No,
Steelers, the
Steelers
Steelers.
twice.
Oh, Steelers
A-
twice. Maybe my
and
mistake.
the Falcons.
Okay, well, the Falcons is a good night, but Steelers, I think it's going to be a bit rough because that guy Pickett is coming in, is growing into himself, and the defense scares me sometimes. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah, it's
damn, it's going to be
yeah,
interesting. Rivalry
trying to
games.
pick that game this week. I just came down to just points for, points against type of thing to
Yeah,
see. I think that if the Steelers are feeling strong with like I said, like we said last week with TJ coming back and whatnot, if they're feeling
yes,
better about themselves, maybe they'll outperform their averages. But based on based on the statistics so far this season, Pittsburgh looks like they should lose by about 3 points on both occasions to the Ravens.
Yeah,
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how well the Ravens defense picks up, because
I'm
we've talked
telling
about
you.
that a couple times this year where they've lost winnable games. So
Yeah,
you know,
man. It's gonna
yeah,
be very interesting to watch, man. Because I'm like, obviously me, I'm biased, I'm Ravens fan, but the Steelers scare me because these games are so unpredictable, man. The rivalry games, especially divisional,
right,
because you're like,
rivalry
whoa, what kind of wild
and
issues
December
happen? Yeah,
and
it's
December,
December.
January.
Come on,
Yeah,
man.
man,
I'm scared,
crazy.
man. I'm
Crazy
shook.
things happen. They both play on turf. I mean, like,
Oh
whatever
my
the weather's
god.
gonna do, it's gonna do it to both teams in both stadiums. It's gonna be old school football between the
It's
two
gonna
as usual in December.
I'm excited for that shit, man, especially for
Yeah,
this
man.
upcoming game tomorrow. Now we got to talk about one of the biggest games last week, if not the biggest, really, because I think it's super significant. That Bengals versus Chiefs game, right?
Huge.
And huge implication. I don't know what it is, but the Bengals always have good games. I don't know what's going on. They always have interesting games, especially in the past few weeks. I'm like, yo, playing Tennessee, playing the Chiefs, like, bro, what's going on right now? And Joe Burrow, right, with the clutch
Mhm.
fourth quarter drives to stop the Chiefs offense from coming on the field and making another comeback, because that's what the Chiefs love to do. They just like to make it high drama and come back from, out of nowhere. But the Bengals
That listen,
won.
hey,
That was
the
crazy. What are your thoughts?
the
Because the
most
Bengals are edging out good teams.
the most important thing about watching the replays on that game is
Hmm.
realizing that by 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the game was done. Right, the
Oh,
Bengals the
good point.
Bengals shut out KC over the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. And that's
Yes, good point.
amazing, right? Because
Good
with
point.
Mahomes and all his comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks over the years in his short career,
Yeah.
that did not happen. The Bengals defense shut out KC over the fourth quarter, and that was pretty amazing.
Mm,
And yeah, Burrows, threw for 250. I think
yeah.
I forget the exact number, but it was like 25 for 35 or something. Really solid like that. No picks, couple
No.
TDs. Yeah, it was a really really impressive game. It was a game they needed to win. Were
Facts.
they on the road? I think so, weren't they? Weren't they in
Yeah, they
KC?
were on the road, I believe. Yeah, so they were in Chiefs
Right,
territory, which makes it even more impressive because they won
right.
at the Chiefs, and I'm like, damn, good for
Unbelievable.
them.
And it was a game they needed for conference standings. Now, I think
Yes,
KC's still one game above the Bengals, but if they do
yes.
become tied, the Bengals have beat both the Bills and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's the Bills are number one seed right now, and then you have the Chiefs, and I believe it's the Ravens number three, but the
Yep,
Bengals are there
yep,
at number four. They're right there, and they've already
yep.
beat the Bills and the Chiefs. So
Just
hypothetically, Bengals could
waiting.
be a number one seed if
They're
they
just waiting. They're,
they keep
they're
on winning.
waiting for someone to make a mistake.
One
And the
team,
Bengals,
yeah.
the Bengals don't look like they're making mistakes many at all right now.
They're not. They're not. The defense. You're right about that. The defensive play of the Bengals. People, this is underrated. Their DBs are underrated for
Yeah.
Cincy. The DBs
Yep.
can actually shut people down, and that's something that when you look beyond the box score, you use your eyes. Use your eyes and see.
Mhm.
Damn, they are shutting dudes down right now, like that.
Yep.
So
And
for me, I'm like, I don't know. Interesting.
and Mixon is back for sure this week.
Yes.
P. Ryan was amazing in his absence.
Yep.
Jamar Chase, I think, was back last week. So
Jamar Chase
like
was there
all their
last.
big offensive tools are coming back. And as I've noted in a previous podcast, Mixon runs downhill in December. It would not
Oh, yeah,
surprise
you
me to
did
see
say
that guy
that.
have like a 200-yard game or something in his last month. Yep.
Fantasy owners, y'all better start mixing. You are not sitting him. He is not sitting. You got to make a playoff push, bro.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. No,
Ooh,
no,
start.
Mixon. Anybody's got Mixon, and they're thinking that P. Ryan supplanted him or something. No, yeah,
No,
no. This is the
no.
way it's gone for the Bengals for 2-3 years now, and I guarantee you, Mixon will be back in the mix, right? So
This is what football is about, especially around December, January. You want your peak performance at this time. You want your
mhm,
guys that you're the healthiest. You want them looking good. You want the team actually going up higher. You don't want to have no bumps around the road
Yep.
because we're about to have playoff football. And I was thinking about something. We're going to stick to the AFC North, man. We got to talk about the massage creep.
Deshaun Watson.
The weirdo, the Deshaun, the return of Deshaun after 2 years of
Yeah,
non-football
that
activities.
was
That tell me, Unc, how sloppy and gross was that game? Maybe as sloppy as Watson himself. I don't know. It's weird.
yeah. I was gonna say it's not quite as sloppy and gross as the backstory to Deshaun Watson right now, but my goodness,
Crazy.
he was just terrible. I
No,
think
it
it was
was
like
bad.
13 for 23 or something like that with a
Yeah.
pick. Yeah, he looked absolutely terrible. Cleveland won that game with a couple of defensive scores. So
Special
think
team
about
score
that.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Crazy.
so 2 touchdowns from the defense. So that means that they wouldn't have beat Texas, right? They wouldn't have beaten the Texans. So yeah. So Deshaun Watson got a mulligan on his first game back, but I'm not expecting very much more. I'm not expecting much more from him.
I definitely agree. You don't get better at anything by not doing it. Meaning he's not going to improve his football skills without playing football for a consistent amount of time. So maybe around the end of the season, they might scratch out some upsets, maybe, but like it won't be due to Deshaun because Deshaun is like he obviously does not look like the same guy who was borderline MVP before all these things happened.
I think missing DeAndre Hopkins doesn't help, but I
Oh
mean, Amari
yes.
Cooper's good, right?
Yes.
But more than that, what I would say mostly that's probably affecting Deshaun Watson right now is, he's been out of the league and he's been out, like his confidence is probably dinged a fair
Oh,
bit
yes.
because he's been exposed in the public eye to be, somebody he didn't, necessarily put himself out there to be.
Oh
He doesn't go
yeah.
around telling everybody that, he just tells everybody he's a great quarterback. He doesn't tell anybody he's a massage room creep as well too. But now that that's been exposed,
Yep.
right? A guy like him has built his whole life based on, his confidence and all that type of thing, his ego, etc. Right now, he's probably got to be feeling kind of crappy about himself. It's been a rough 700 days and this didn't help.
I'm telling you, man, like for me, I'll be honest, I was a big fan. I still kind of am a fan of the Deshaun Watson, the player, the person, not so much, obviously, because of all these things. But I like a redemption story, so I hope that he turns it around, especially the fact that of all of this happening to him. Of course, we don't approve that, we don't support that that noise, but
Yeah.
just as a pure football podcast, watching what we see on the field, when Deshaun Watson is playing good football, he is fun to watch, man. This
When
man can throw a ball. This man can run out of the pocket. I've seen him do some amazing plays, and I'm like, damn.
that first season, that first season or two, he was
Yes.
just fun to watch in Houston. He really was. I
Yes.
forget the name of the second receiver that fell off the earth. Besides
Is it
Hopkins, there's
Kendall
another guy
Fuller?
too.
Is it Fuller?
Yeah, it was Fuller, man. I
Yeah,
grabbed that
Fuller's
guy at the time because remember that guy
nice.
was getting like almost a touchdown every game. Like even your
Yes.
best wide
Yes.
receivers get about one every other game type of thing. Like a top wide receiver in the NFL gets like 10 to 12 touchdowns a year, right? That's outstanding
Right.
production. But
Right.
Will Fuller, he was just amazing. He was getting like just on the number of touches he was getting, the
Oh
number of
my God.
touchdowns he was getting per touch was just insane.
And
And it was all
yes.
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson was giving him that go ball. Just fly. Just race
Yeah,
these guys. I'm just going to launch it in the air. You're going to catch a touchdown for like 60, 70 yards. He was
right.
a great fantasy pickup for sure, though.
And he hasn't done it with any other quarterback. So,
Of
when
course.
Deshaun Watson feels good about himself, he's confident, he's got his, he's got everything going for him. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's excellent. But yeah, I mean, being exposed as a bit of a creep in front of everybody who loves you is, it's probably got to ding his ego and confidence a little bit. And I expect to see, I hope he comes back as well, too.
Me too.
I
We
hope he
like
makes.
football. We're football fans, man. I'm sorry. Like,
That's it, right?
yeah.
But but I hope he also reconciles whatever else was going on in his background too, because that was,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's not cool.
Absolutely, man. I'll always, you know what it is, man? Work on yourself first, figure out yourself, because there was obviously something lacking for you to go do those kind of weird, creepy things. And ultimately,
Yeah.
now that could have cost your career. But as weird as the NFL is, this man got a $200 million contract after all that stuff. That goes to show you how valuable of a quarterback he is. 200 million guaranteed after all the drama and BS. And I'm telling you something, if he gets back to even the form he had before, man, the AFC is going to be really, really wild. And you know, we're going to stick to the AFC anyways. And we're going to talk about, well, a little bit of NFC. We're going to talk about these Steelers coming back. And I think you're going to like this conversation now, because these are your boys. The Steelers are slowly coming back. Could they sneak in
Yeah.
as a wild card? Because they're basically competing with the Jets. I think maybe well, with the Ravens, and could the Steelers sneak in as a wild card? Because I'm getting some vibes, and I'm like, oh, what's going on in the AFC right now?
Yeah, well, they've already got 7 losses.
Yeah,
So that,
tough.
even if they went on the greatest tear ever, they would finish off at 10-7.
Yeah.
So I doubt that's going to be enough to get them into the playoffs per se. But what would be amazing, would be so great for the Steelers, if they somehow managed to preserve Mike Tomlin's 500 record. They somehow managed to.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be
Wouldn't
so
that be
cool.
fun, right? That would
Yeah.
be very, very cool if they managed that. And yeah, they've got their division at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Mike Tomlin has shown us again this year that even with subpar talent,
Yeah.
he does have good schemes. He does coach defense very well. Him and Matt Canada have made the best out of a bad situation.
Yes.
They could easily have like 9 or 10 losses by now. So, it's been that type of season, right? You'd hardly think I'm a fan, right? But I'm
Yeah.
pragmatic. But believe you me, I think the coaching will show out by the end of the year, and I think they are going to make it reasonably respectable a season for the Steelers. And their defense is getting better, and as you would expect, a rookie quarterback is also starting to show progress as well.
I'm telling you, man, it's just interesting to see these narratives of these teams that everybody were kind of saw for dead earlier in the season, or
Yeah.
teams that were looked at, oh, this is an amazing team, and then they come to shit. Look, talking about the Rams, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, damn. But then I'm like looking at a team that's really interesting to me, and I mentioned this last week, and I want to get your thoughts on it. The Detroit Lions. They're coming, man. They're coming. They're
Yeah.
playing the Vikings tomorrow. They beat the Jags 40-14 last week. The Detroit
Mhm.
Lions, man, they might give you 40 points, they might take away 40 points. You know what I mean? It's like so weird. It's sink or swim with them. What are your thoughts about Detroit Lions potentially maybe sneaking into the playoffs in the NFC side, man? I've been liking them.
Well, well, I've really enjoyed watching them recently.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift has been back on. Jamal Williams keeps doing what he does. Amon St. Brown.
Yes, my
Uh,
guy.
oh yeah, what's his name? DJ Chark as well has been getting a
Shark.
lot of yards.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on with that Detroit team right now, and their defense has been coming around a little bit.
Mm.
It's really interesting to watch them play Minnesota this week, because
Yes.
both teams are just like, if you look at their points for and points against, the Minnesota Vikings, despite being a 10-2 team,
Mm.
only have about a 20-point difference between their points scored versus points against. But
Oh,
Detroit is the same, but just going the other way, right? And so
interesting.
Detroit actually, like, they score about 26 and a quarter points or something like that every
Oh.
game, and they have about 27 points scored against them. Right. So So yeah, they're as 500-y as Minnesota when you look at their points for, points against. But Minnesota has just got, they've really closed out games this year. I don't think any of us expected them to be 10-2, maybe on top of the division, but to be actually 10-2, and also looking down the barrel of a really weak finishing schedule.
Yeah.
I would have to, you would have to think statistically that a team like the Minnesota Vikings, with who's just, barely scored more points than they have scored against them, you think they're going to end up with at least about 5 losses. But looking at their schedule, for heaven's sakes, unless Detroit does something to them today, or on Sunday, which I think they will, actually. I have a feeling that that's a really good one to bet on. I think that's a really interesting game right there. And I think that Detroit will continue to put points on the board while their defense looks like it's tightening up a little bit. So I think they may not make the playoffs, but I think that they could sure enough play spoiler. That's for darn sure. And statistically, I just can't see where the Vikings don't, recess slightly to the mean. Otherwise, we're going to end up with like a 14-3 team or something like that, and they just don't look that good.
You know what? They remind me of the Steelers a few years ago, where the Steelers were like 12-4 or something insane, but they were winning games super tight, super like they were doing the opposite of what the Raiders are doing. Whenever the game got tight, they won. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Close it out.
this is what is happening right now with the Vikings. Whenever it's tight, because it's always a tight game, Vikings never fully demolish a team. It's like it's always a 1 point or 2 point margin, and that's why, like, Unc, you transitioned that perfectly. We probably should talk about the lines because, bruh, if you're betting, I'm putting some money on that game, brother.
Let's look at Minnesota.
Let me know what the lines are, Unc. Yeah, that was a good transition, bro. Go ahead.
Let me tell you, boy. Detroit is actually favored by 1.5 points with a 51.5 point over under. Right. So Detroit at home is favored by 1.5 points, which means that it's basically a pick'em game. Right. It shouldn't be that close if Minnesota is 10-2. Right. And with all those points put on the board, right, they're expecting all those points to expect a 1.5 to 2 point game between the two. Like, this is pretty amazing. It's like they're expecting like a 27-25 game or something like that. So, which actually lines up with the statistics we were talking about earlier.
If you think about it, that's most of Detroit's games. They're the shootouts.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So it's a matter of whether or not what's his name? Kirk Cousins can put up enough points to keep up with Detroit. I think is what it's all going to boil down to. Can he put up 38 or 40 points? Because he might need to.
Yes, I agree. In terms of putting up that amount of points, because Detroit is not going to have a 14 13 or 7 point. No, they're going to put up touchdowns, man. They're going to put up points on the board. And I would take the over on that in terms of how many total points, because this is going to be a fireworks show. Both defenses are ass cheeks. They're not going to play defense. It's going to be just an offensive explosion. But in terms of lines, man, is there any other lines or spreads that are interesting to you? Anything our bettors should look out for, like, at least have an eye on, because there's some interesting
Yeah, there's a couple of good ones here. The first one is, of course, Houston at Dallas, right? Only because they're giving Dallas 18 points. Yeah. But look at the over-under on this, 44.
44. Yeah, you know what? It's because Dallas went crazy last week, so they're thinking Dallas
going to 18-point spread. It's like they expect Dallas to just win 44-0. And right now, Dallas looks like they could. Dallas looks insane right now.
They look
but the other one that's interesting is the Jacksonville Tennessee game. Again, they're giving Tennessee 3.5 points, and I know we don't care that much about the AFC South, but again, it's an interesting over-under. It's only 41 points. So I just don't see how somebody's supposed to get to, unless they're expecting like 17-13 or some kind of score like that. But I'm expecting more points than that. So I'm kind of expecting that Jacksonville, Tennessee might surprise some people. It might be like 2 points, 1 point. And I couldn't tell you for sure which team it would be. I would assume that Tennessee is going to, after their loss last week, or a couple of weeks ago against Cincinnati. I'm expecting them to come out strong.
Yeah.
We'll see. The other one that's really fascinating too is the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, over under there of 36.5.
Yeah.
But they're giving Pittsburgh 2 points on that. And I'm not sure that's exactly right. Again, based on our statistical analysis, what we were looking at earlier.
Yeah.
So now, again, they build in that, point to point and a half advantage for the home team. So maybe that accounts for that. But the 36.5 points, that's so low. I'm kind of expecting them to score the over on that. I'm hoping anyways.
I
Just
will,
as a fan.
You're right. It's very interesting that they have it at 36.5 points, because I'm like, damn, that's pretty low in terms of but you never know. Both defenses might come out to play, and then we might have a pretty old school game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The black and blue NFC North, right? Or AFC North.
Yeah.
Now, the other one interesting too is going to be KC Denver. Again, with a low over-under. Well, about average. 44 points they're calling for it. But they're giving KC 9.5 points in Denver.
Oh.
Right. So given the way KC's been playing and given how lights out Denver's defense has managed to be, 9.5 points seems a little large.
It's too much. Yeah,
that would be the bettor's choice right there. I think that would be the one to put on Denver, believe it or not. If you, I'm telling people,
damn, you're going out the paint. You're going out the paint. But you know what? That's not even a bad take, because think about it like this: Denver's defense is not allowing more than 20 points on opponents. I've noticed this. It's like they lose at like 13-7, those type of games, because Russ can't score 2 touchdowns. It's crazy. But neither can the opposition, though.
Nobody's blown them out. No one's blown them out by more than a touchdown in recent weeks because of that. So it's like, if Russell Wilson could just score some touchdowns in there,
they might beat KC, and that would shock the league, brother. Because the divisional, the seeding, everything gets.
Yeah, but so again, I'm sure Denver's going to lose that game, but I don't think they're going to lose it by 10 points.
I agree. I don't think by 10 points. It's not. No, we haven't seen the Broncos lose by 10 points really in a while. I don't really think so.
And the fun game I think that we're going to have is the Miami at the Chargers.
Yes.
I think this will be redemption week for Miami after losing to San Francisco last week, because it looked like San Francisco blew them out with the final score, but it wasn't really like that. There was a scoop and score at the end. It was like 24-17 with like half of the fourth quarter left. So, I mean, Miami, Miami did sort of compete against that defense, but in the end, San Francisco's just did what we expected them to do, right? But so anyways, I expect Miami to redeem themselves this week against the Chargers in California again on the road. And I think it's a Sunday night game too.
Sunday night football.
Assuming Tags is back in the game, I'm pretty sure he was a bit questionable for this week, but I think he's going to play. If they have their whole offense going, it's going to be a barn burner again. They're asking for 53.5 points as the over-under, right? And it's 3.5 points. Miami's favored by 3.5 points at SoFi. So it's going to be interesting, man. And I fully expect that to be again a 30-something game.
I fully agree with you. These teams put up points. It's going to be very interesting. But we need Tua needs to be there, or that's going to just mess up.
Tua with Waddle and Hill.
Yes.
Yeah, they need Tyreek Hill to have his type of game. Absolutely. He needs to get into the end zone at least once.
And the way the Chargers play, it's going to come down to like a 4th down call by that Staley coach, and it's going to be at the worst time possible, and they're going to lose in a tragic Chargers way. Like, how do they find ways to lose? I'm like, this team is so good. When the season started, I had the Chargers like really up there. I was so high on them, but
everybody does every year because they're so fun.
It's like, man, can't we learn? Like, why do we trust these guys, man? It's crazy, man.
Like seriously, from Dan Fouts days forward. So
Wow,
Dan
even down
Fouts
Fouts
stays
days?
forward. Yeah, man, he's like San Diego has been in more conference championship games over the years where you're just like going, oh, it's got to be this time for sure, right? And they never
Wow.
do.
And even the Phil Rivers era, man, they had some teams with LaDainian Tomlinson,
I'm
Antonio
telling
Gates. I'm like, they had some team, Sean Merriman on the defense. I'm like, oh,
you,
this is a
like
team. It
like
always swap.
generation after generation, they they
Hall of
have great
Famers,
quarterbacks.
man. Straight up Hall of
Yeah,
Famers, you know? Like,
yeah.
God damn. But you know what? We'll say it like this, man. Fantasy starts and sits, man. We're going into the playoffs. Most teams are, you're set. What you have is what you have. Trade deadline's done. Everything's done.
Mm-hmm.
Starts and sits. For me, I'm always going to say my usual suspects. I'm on Rock, crazy. Jamal Williams off the
Yep.
Lions, crazy. What I would suggest, though, is that, especially with starts and sits, receivers. I've noticed that a lot of receivers are getting a lot of balls these days, are doing balling out. In terms of running
Mm-hmm.
backs, if you don't have the guys we always talk about every podcast, the Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henrys, Pollard, if you don't have those guys, then maybe you can play around with the waiver wire, but usual suspects for starts and sits. Unc, do you have anything maybe starts and sit that maybe the people can know about, or something a little, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
any
yeah,
starts and
sure.
sits in your idea?
Um, Yeah, right now, of course, the Seattle backfield's up in
Oh
arms, right?
yeah.
Because Kenny Walker III may not start this week. He may his foot is injured. He may be
Yeah.
out for a couple of weeks, or he might be back this week. No one can figure out what the hell's going on there. But if you can figure out what's going to happen in the Seattle backfield this week, chances are you'll find a good waiver wire grab right there.
For sure.
I think they're talking about DJ Dallas or Travis Homer. One of those two guys is probably going to be in there. But
Oh,
nobody's really expecting too much simply because they're all jinked up.
yeah.
And Buddy's throwing for like 350 yards a game. Tony Pollard
My
again is just
guy.
looking amazing, right? So and he's playing up against Houston, so chances are they're going to have a huge week. Both him and Zeke. Right.
Yes.
Joe Mixon, we talked about. Now, the other one that's going to be looking pretty good this week that maybe people have on their bench and they haven't started him in a while, but he's been better of late. And that's Donta Foreman.
Oh,
Dante Foreman is going to be on the road against Seattle. And
okay.
Seattle has like the second worst, run defense as far as fantasy points are concerned in Yahoo.
Yeah, Carolina
So
Panthers running back. He's really good. Yeah.
Donta Foreman, I bet you, is going to have a good week this week at least.
Mhm.
Now, the other one that's interesting for you Ravens fans is we all love Mark Andrews, right? But
Mark.
he goes off even better with Hundley as the quarterback, believe it or not. He does even
Oh.
better with Hundley. Yeah, apparently there was a stretch, what was it, in 2021, I think,
Yeah, it was
where
last season. Yeah.
he started about 10 games, I think, for Baltimore or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, his numbers with Andrews were just huge, right? So start Andrews with full confidence.
Nice.
Like you said about wide receivers, Minnesota is probably the third worst
Justin.
against the pass. So I'm on St. Brown this week.
Yeah.
Maybe Chark again. Now, the
Mhm.
other one I've been calling for a couple of weeks in a row now. To start, basically for the last half of the season is Christian Kirk, and I think he's continuing to look good this week as well.
That's a nice pickup. Yes.
Yeah. Tennessee's got one of the, I think, has the worst fantasy offense against receivers or defense
Oh,
against receivers.
okay.
So Christian Kirk is in a great spot for this weekend. He's had 7+ targets in his last 6 games, right? And his last one, he went for like 9 receptions and 105 yards, which has been normal for him of late. He has been getting, between 50 and 100 yards every week. Now, he's had a bye week in there, and he had an offer, right? But 3 weeks ago, I think it was, he had another 100+ yards for the game, as well as 2 touchdowns. So he's actually been putting them up, and he's in a great spot this weekend. And you would have to describe him as due, seeing as how he's missed a couple of weeks now where he hasn't seen the end zone. So the way wide receivers normally sort of alternate every other weekend type of thing, I would say that I think Christian Kirk against that Tennessee pass defense is in for a good game.
Nice. No, that's a good point, man. And I'll sprinkle in a receiver that's actually doing really, really well right now. Who I really like, Garrett Wilson. I have him on one of my teams, and
Yeah.
he's been really performing really well with Mike White. So when you see
Hmm.
these backups or these bench guys or whatever, like you said, Tyler Huntley with Mike Andrews, sometimes they play better with the starters. So
Yep.
Garrett Wilson has been putting up crazy numbers, and that's one of the guys who's been giving me a lot of points. But I will say this: there was no audible today, so no need to be scared, Unc.
Right, right.
But yeah, hey, do you have anything you want to touch on before we close it out? Because I think we gave them some fire today, man. Whoosh.
Well, I just think that everybody should be watching Dallas.
Yes.
I'm not a huge Dallas fan at all. You know, being a Steelers fan, in fact, I hate them. And this whole America's team, da 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 da. So, you know, generationally, decade over decade, I've always sort of disliked, you know, the Dallas Cowboys. But they've done fantastic stuff, and they are looking really, really good right now. Dak looks like he's decided that he's coming back into that team, and he's going to really make everybody know how good this team really is. So
Man,
that's really
33
amazing.
points in the fourth quarter, man. How nuts is that?
It's just insane, right? And you know,
What?
it's just yeah. Because I kept when I looked at that score, I was
Yeah.
actually surprised to see that Indianapolis was actually, you know, reasonably within one score. I think in the third quarter, I was surprised to
Nice.
see that. But actually, one last thing, I'm going to give you a left hook this week
Oh
because
shit. What's up?
I went to go look in on our MVP conversation a bit more because we were talking about how
Oh.
much it's a QB league, etc.
Yes, we
So
always talk about that. Yeah, talk to me, brother.
I decided I wanted to take a look and see exactly how long it's been since you know, we saw more different types of players be the MVP,
Nice.
and it's pretty much as we would expect.
Mm.
From 2000, Marshall Falk was the MVP in 2000 after
Oh,
having, you know,
yes.
an insane season, right?
Yes.
And we saw Sean Alexander, Adrian Peterson, and LaDainian Tomlinson also be
Yes.
MVPs in, I think, 2005, 2006, and 2012. But
Yes.
every other MVP, right? 16 other MVPs, 17 other MVPs were all freaking quarterbacks. And that
Yes.
trend is, that trend. So basically from 2000 to 2021, that's sort of how it's been. So,
Mm.
okay, so who else has been in there, right? Let's see here. We talked about what's his name, LT being
LT.
the MVP in
Yeah.
'86.
Mm.
The other, guess who was the MVP in fucking 1982? I'll give you
I
100 guesses. You'll never get it.
I probably won't. Is it probably John
Fucking
Riggins or something? I don't know.
no, place kicker. Place kicker
No,
Mark
stop.
Mosley. They
Stop.
gave an MVP to a place kicker in 1982.
I'm done. Are you serious? I'm gonna have to Google
I'm
this shit
not even
after the
joking.
show. Are you
I
for
am not
real?
even joking. Yeah.
What was the
So yeah.
rationale behind that? I like it though. I kind of like it. I rock with it. But like, what?
Well, he had a lot of numbers that year for sure. It was also
Yeah.
a league that you know, the QB numbers weren't nearly as huge as they were, right? I mean, like maybe
True.
a great
Jeez.
quarterback might have got 3,000 yards passing, right?
Right.
And I think he might have gone 27 for 28 or even perfect for the season. There was something extraordinary about just
Wow.
how many points that the guy got, but also as a percentage for his craft. So that was surprising. And plus, I think you had a couple of MVPs, Emmett Smith, I think, and someone else,
Oh.
another running back in '91 who was also an
Maybe
MVP.
Marcus Allen. I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been. So they've been sprinkled in there over
Yeah.
the years, but it's been a slow trend towards the QB being the dominant choice for the MVP. But
Yeah.
just a little history with you, just to confirm that, you know, what our thoughts on this are, and they are correct, right? So the
Yeah.
2000s, it really has gone to QBs just year after year after year after year. Then, you know, somebody blows it all up by, you know, doing something crazy like running for 2,000 yards or something, and then
Yeah.
they go right back to QBs again. So that's how it is.
It's kind of crazy. Well, good research. I had no idea. A place kicker, bro. Crazy.
kind of had a feeling that it was all QBs, but I just had to make sure. Just check the numbers, right? But yeah,
Yeah,
three or four out of 21, and the rest are all QBs. So yeah,
crazy.
we need
Just
to go
think
back to
about
that
it. We need to go
that one
back to
A
that.
one B
Yeah.
combo.
Yeah. 1A, 1B, because think about it like this. Last year, the real MVP in my eyes was Cooper Cup. But that season he had was
Yep,
amazing. A few
yep.
seasons ago, Derrick Henry was ran for 2,000 yards and he barely got MVP votes. And then you even look at this year, I would argue Justin Jefferson has such a
Yep.
huge impact for the Vikings. If he wasn't on the Vikings, this Vikings team, bro, is like 4-8 or something like that. Like they're a
Do you
pathetic.
realize Justin
Straight up.
Jefferson's first 4 seasons, I think it is, his numbers are actually greater than Jerry Rice,
Yes, they
and also
are. See, yes, yes,
also bigger than Randy Moss, right? So
exactly. You're right.
remember how you felt about those guys when you look at Justin Jefferson.
I'm like, damn, he's got Hall of Fame trajectory. Like if he stays healthy, everything goes right.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, we gotta learn. We gotta like stop with these QB awards so much because it's so easy for a quarterback to go for 4,000 yards now for just to score 30 TDs, less than 10 picks. It's so much easier now in this modern game, modern era. Let's reward
Yeah.
the other guys, bro. Like I would be so cool to see a place kicker win an MVP because you never see just sort of like a novelty. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
wow, you know. You think about like Aaron Donald, what he did for the Rams in the past few years. He's the TJ Watt, like we always mentioned. So
Yeah.
many quality football players that are not getting awarded. And that affects their contracts. That affects, their legacy. You know what I mean? I'm
Mhm.
like, damn, it's just interesting to me,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how they designed the modern NFL game. It's very QB heavy as far as the numbers go. So that's how it looks on the stat sheet, and that's how it looks in
Right.
fantasy. So just everything from the narrative that we write to the statistics that we put down
Right.
points towards quarterbacks. But it's not the running backs' fault that they've gone to running backs by committee, and the
Yeah.
likelihood of that guy ever getting 27 to 30 carries in a game and 150 and 45 receiving and 3 touchdowns, like those type of Priest Holmes games are over.
Yeah, it's just done, man. That's why when I like watching Josh Jacobs because he's almost like a throwback. They're running him
He
like
is.
28 times. I'm like, yo, that's a lot but I like it because he's productive. And I think a
Well,
lot of these running backs could be productive. They're given the chance or other players.
but yes, that is why those running backs have been that productive in the past, is
Mm,
because in the old bell cow system, when
yeah.
you got to that fourth quarter, right, and you started getting carries number 22 to 28,
Yes.
or 30, right, you start to run downhill as the defense you're playing against gets tired. I mean, it's been it's been a mashup all game long where you're going head to head, hammer and tong, one line against the other, smashing into
Yeah.
the trenches, all that type of thing. Running backs start to wear down the defensive lines they're playing against if they're allowed to play into the fourth quarter like that. But now
Yeah.
it's just like 15 for you, 15 for him, and 5 over here, plus the
We're gonna
quarterback.
We're gonna throw the ball. You know what was ridiculous to me this season? I think Josh Allen had a game where he threw the ball like 69 times, something 65 times. I think it was against the Jets or something. I don't know. He played against some team and he threw the ball damn near 65 or more times. What? Like,
Well, I
why are
think
we doing
Brady
that? That's so.
Brady the same way. How many times has Brady thrown over 50 times this year, right? I mean,
I'm like, what is going on? And you know what? Brady will throw the ball 50 times just to score 16 points. What?
yeah, yeah, he's completely inefficient.
You're like, what is going on with the game right now? Because I'm thinking, like, okay, if you have a hard-nosed running back who's gonna hammer the defensive line, like you said, these guys get tired. They're human beings. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And by the fourth quarter, late in the game, he can
you
burst
start
out
running
for like a
downhill.
game-winning, downhill, game-winning like catch, apparently, like Josh Jacobs did a
Yeah.
few weeks ago. They're because the guys are tired.
Well,
People are tired of pushing and shoving and tackling for
and
so
think about the
long.
weather. Think
Yeah.
about the weather if you're playing on turf in December as well too, right?
Right.
It gets sloppy, man, and those mutterbacks, boy, let me tell you.
The old school guys, man.
Yeah,
Bo Jackson, Herschel Walkers, those bell cows, Earl Campbell. I like watching
yeah.
their highlights at times, and just looking at the
Even
old school
Terrell
guys.
Davis, for heaven's sakes, right?
TB, you're
He played
right.
on turf in Denver, right?
Yes,
He's a
sir.
guy who really just started running downhill in the fourth quarter as well, too, right? I mean, it's just an amazing thing to watch when you start to see that defensive line get a little bit looser, and they just start
Yeah.
galloping through the line. It's just amazing.
Another one for you, Unc. Gus the Bus, Jerome Bettis. That was a
Yeah, there's
perfect example of that, where he
another
would
guy.
just go in between the tackles, give me the ball, and he had some speed to him. I'm like, oh, he's huge, but he's kind of fast. So
Well,
he
yeah,
would
he had
wear
light
down the
feet.
defense as well. You know what I mean?
Bettis had really light feet. But yeah,
Yeah.
Bettis would take over a game in the fourth quarter.
Yes, he
All right.
would.
It gets to that point where you can't hold him back anymore. And, instead of getting, 4.1 yards, 4.5, next thing you start chunking it out at 6.5, 7 yards a carry, and
Yeah.
it beats the hell out of the other team.
And then think about it like this: on a logical perspective, you're chewing up clock. If you have a lead and you
Yes.
have a
Yep.
back who's going to get you 6 yards on first down, four
Huge.
yards on second, you already got a first down. You done chewed up how much clock time? The
That's
game's
it.
pretty much over.
That's it. And that's why when you're trying to come from behind and you're slinging the ball all over the place and you've abandoned the running game,
Thank you.
right? Only three things can happen with a pass, and two of them are bad.
You know what I mean? Or you can pull a Derek Carr and throw a pick at the most important times of a game.
Right? Well, that's it, right?
Jesus
Three
Christ.
things can happen with a pass, right? You can have a completion, you can
Yeah,
have a drop, or he can get intercepted. Only one of those
exactly.
things is good.
The odds, 33% odds of success. Hell no. I'm gonna just hand it off to the guy right behind me so that he can go up the field and get us closer to where we're trying to go, man.
Yeah,
I love that
that's it.
audible by you, Unc. That was a really cool one. I never thought about a place kicker winning MVP. Who would have
We'll
who
have to
would have
look into
thought,
that one
bro?
further down the road. We'll have to look at those stats next week.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you, man. With big broadcast football talk 10 with Unc surprising me.
All
And we
right.
out, bro. Respect.
One love, buddy.
One.